This is surveillance footage of Jacqueline Vandergriff, just hours before her dismembered body was found in a woodland northwest of Grapevine, Texas. But what precisely happened to her, how she died, or even why, were questions no one could initially answer. That was until a certain individual entered the spotlight, and as the investigations proceeded, Jackie's gruesome murder revealed the sick and twisted actions of an insanely jealous and delusional man. Welcome back to Coffee House Crime, folks. My name is Adrian, and today we're looking at the case of Jackie Vandergriff. Now, most of us have been here after a drink or two. Our confidence creeps up, strangers seem easier to talk to, and our worries may even slip away. But when Jackie accepted a new friendship from a seemingly gentle man, she had no idea what catastrophic outcome awaited her. Before we begin, and just to let you know that I post true crime and strange cases here weekly, so if you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to Coffee House Crime. And now with that said, please grab yourself a coffee, pull up a seat and get ready for the deep dive. This is the case of Jackie Vandergriff. Welcome back, folks. Grab your cowboy hat and your leather boots, as in today's video we're touching down on the dry and expansive land of Texas, and more specifically the city of Denton. Located in the northwestern portion of the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area, Denton boasts excellent connections to its larger cities, while also sporting easy access to the great Texan countryside. With a population of 140,000 residents, the city has enough energy to keep you busy, while remaining quiet enough to keep urban claustrophobia at bay. Initially incorporated in 1866, Denton became an agricultural trade centre for the mill and cottage industries. And fast forward to the year 1881, the arrival of the Texas and Pacific Railway brought an influx of people to the area. Moving forward, multiple universities were established, which, to this day, still serve as primary contributors to the local economy. Several hospitals, medical establishments, and a truck manufacturing company also play vital roles to the economy, making Denton a diverse and relatively affluent place to live. Taking it straight from the horse's mouth, Denton is known for its friendly small-town feel paired with big city amenities. Across Denton, there is a pulsating entertainment culture, featuring live performance art venues, music and film festivals, museums, and historical sites. But returning to its educational sector, Denton's three major players are the University of North Texas, Denton's Independent School District, and Texas Women's University, also known as TWU for short. With over 13,000 residents in the Denton campus, TWU creates a lot of the hustle and bustle found in the city. It's home to the Texas Women's Pioneers, the TWU Gymnastics Squads, and back in 2016, was also home to a student named Jacqueline Vandergriff. Nicknamed Jackie for short, Jacqueline Vandergriff was born on March 4, 1992 in Carrollton, Texas. She was the youngest of two daughters and was raised in the colony before moving to Frisco, which are both found in the same state. During her childhood, Jackie was a big fan of Thomas the Tank Engine, and she used to love reenacting the shows on her own train set. She was a dynamic child too, and before she could even walk, she learned to somersault. At the age of just 3 years old, she started attending classes at the World Olympic Gymnastics Academy. And while here, Jackie quickly progressed through the levels, eventually competing at level 5 in state competitions. Moving into her adult years, Jackie was very active online. She had great ambitions to get into corporate wellness, and hoped to provide healthcare resources to American businesses for their employees. Studying nutrition at TWU, Jackie was a licensed esthetician and had just completed her junior year. She had finished high school with flying colours, and was keen to push her education and passion for nutrition to the next level. She was constantly posting tips for living a healthier lifestyle, and sharing articles on all the latest health news. Now, these stories rarely come with a self-introduction, but in June 2016, Jackie created her own self-synopsis video on YouTube, which, let's be honest, would be rude not to share.
Hello everyone, my name is Jacqueline Vandergriff, but friends call me Jackie. I am originally from the Colony, Texas, but I moved to Frisco when I was in elementary school, and I graduated from Wakeland High School. I am currently a junior here at Texas Women's University, and my major is nutrition with an emphasis in wellness. As far as my career aspirations go, right now I'm most interested in corporate wellness. I think more and more companies are starting to recognize the need to provide good health resources for their employees. So I think right now that's where I'm wanting to go with my career. In this class, I hope to learn more about how to use the resources available to reach different individuals and to communicate effectively with the amount of diversity that we have in our community, as well as just building on my overall communication skills.
Jackie was known in the local community as a kind and gentle woman who always looked out for the welfare of others, both human and animal. As a lifelong vegetarian, she advocated for animal rights, and also loved to spend her time travelling around the country with her friends. And with great interest in Texas barbecues and country music, many would argue that she was a true Texan at heart. Now, we all remember our 20s, which for many of us were the true heydays of college, and although the work was challenging, the evenings and weekends were both fun and social. But funding tuition fees while also having a social life was very expensive, and Jackie's parents couldn't fully afford to keep her afloat. Therefore, a part-time job was required. On September 13th, 2016, Jackie was out looking for a part-time job. One of the places she had decided to stop by was a bar named the Fry Street Public House, and during her time here, Jackie paused to have a drink. The day had become long in the tooth with thanks to her search, and as she sat at the bar speaking to the bartender, a man 2 seats away from her approached them. Although he was a total stranger, he must have struck the right note for Jackie, as shortly after this, both she and the unknown man left the bar to travel to a second one, named Shots and Crafts. Surveillance footage captures the two on their way, and although not staying with the group, they were accompanied by a third individual who was also a bartender. Arriving at Shots and Crafts shortly after 9 PM, the two then stayed for a couple drinks. Jackie's intention to find work had shifted into one of friendship, and it's assumed that she saw potential in this older man. Standing just below 6 foot tall, he had a physically fit physique, expressed himself confidently and often smiled at her, and in the surveillance footage he can be seen touching her arm multiple times. Although perhaps intoxicated, while here, she tweeted from her phone to say, "I'm glad I decided to get off Tinder and walk to a bar." Shortly after this, she had a drink, stood up from the bar, let him finish her drink, and then left in his company. The two left at around 11 PM, and whether they were planning to head to another bar, go home together, or perhaps just part ways, nobody knew at this time. But Jackie clearly felt comfortable around him. You can't blame her either. People felt safe in a town like Denton, which has a substantially lower crime rate than the state and national average. Although no other surveillance footage is available to the public, it looks like she did in fact decide to return to his place that evening, as cell phone data would later confirm this. Now, the following is something that I say far too often, but unfortunately, given the subject matter that I cover, there is nothing I can do to change it. And sadly, that surveillance footage that you just saw, that would be the last time she was recorded alive. And come the morning, the town of Denton awoke to a nightmarish rumour. September 14th, 2016. At approximately 6:27 AM, the Grapevine Police Department received multiple phone calls reporting a fire had broken out in the Acorn Woods. Firefighters and officers were quick to locate and extinguish the fire, which was found at 1800 Black Acorn Woods Loop. But sadly, the shock and horror was only just beginning, as found in the middle of the fire was a charred body. Lying in the middle of a blue plastic kiddie pool, the body had been dismembered, assorted into multiple trash bags, and the heart had been cut out. To add to this, it appeared as if an accelerant had been used to set the fire. Now, to begin with, nobody knew to whom the body belonged to, but responding officers could tell, based on the identifiable features, that it was of a young female adult. And all of this was clearly no accident. Fortunately, those who had called officers to report the fire stuck around until it was over, and not only had they spotted the fire, but they also saw the perpetrator who set it. And furthermore, they could recall him leaving the scene in a white SUV. Local officers soon identified the vehicle before tracing it back to an individual, and when they first caught sight of his name and face, their stomachs dropped, as he was all too familiar. He goes by the name of Charles Bryant, and awful selfies aside, this man has a very troubling history. Born on August 8, 1986, he originally grew up in Bremerton, Washington, before moving to Hasselt, Texas. Just into his 30s, Charles was 4 years Jackie's senior and held multiple short-term jobs. Without much going on upstairs, his strength seemed to be in his physique. And through his countless selfies, both with and without a shirt, it is evident that he spent most of his time hitting the gym and eating kale. His short-term jobs reflected this too. He worked at a local gay bar called the Urban Cowboy, and trained several clients at the local Procore fitness gym. Now, chronologically speaking, Charles Bryant's criminal history isn't so great. But on the other hand, it doesn't cause immediate concern either. Minor petty crimes like forgery in 2010, and possession of an illegal substance in 2013. However, by the year 2016, things had become much more severe. In fact, police officers immediately recognised him, because he had been arrested twice in the most recent week alone. Now, to explain the next part of this story, we must first introduce a third and very vital person, and her name is Caitlin Mathis. Aged 18 at the time, Caitlin was a personal trainer and bartender living in the Denton area, and to add to this, had recently graduated from high school. Yet perhaps something more pertinent to this story is that she was 11 years younger than Charles. The two met in a bar in June 2016, and in a relatively short period of time, both Charles and Caitlin began to date. Now at first, things were going very well between the two. Where Caitlin was shy, soft and delicate, Charles was confident, outgoing and charming, and he seemed to have a very positive effect on her. But sadly, this wouldn't last very long, and after a mere 3 weeks of dating, the ugly truth formed cracks through his warm and caring facade. This is likely not surprising to many of you, but Charles can be described as a high-maintenance narcissist, and although it seemed like he had his life together, he was very controlling, possessive and nasty. Caitlin constantly had to provide her full and undisclosed attention to him, and he often told her that he was the very best she would ever get. And, of course, his favourite conversation was always about himself. As the autumn semester began and Caitlin turned her focus back to her studies, she decided to call the relationship off. They had only been dating for a couple of months, and their arguments had generated a series of red flags in her mind. But trying to push him away, he began to barrage her with text messages, all of which eventually turned aggressive. And when he realised they did not affect her, he forced his way into her campus dorm room. Following this, the man was arrested and banned from the campus, formally under trespassing violations. But on September the 6th, which happened to be their so-called 3-month anniversary, he returned with a bouquet of flowers and a 2-page love letter. Entirely terrified by his persistence, Caitlin hid in a closet as she dialed 911. And the police and campus security were very quick to do their job, and this body camera footage captures him being arrested. Straight after this, Charles was formally jailed on a stalking charge. But Charles Bryant's deadly obsession would not stop there, and 4 days after bonding out of jail, his strange behaviour continued. On September 13th, Charles made his way to Fry Street Public House, which happened to be right on the edge of Caitlin's restraining order and only half a mile from her dorm. A few hours after speaking to his attorney and learning that he was likely to face more time behind bars, it is pretty obvious to say that Charles was probably not in a good mood. But what wasn't clear was why he was here or what his motive was. Maybe he wanted to get back together with Caitlin, or maybe he was enraged by her so-called betrayal. He ended up speaking to several young women that evening, and unfortunately, it was confirmed that the last woman he spoke to was Jackie Vandergriff. Circling back to the body in the woods, officers had no idea how it got here or whom the body belonged to, but reports were beginning to emerge that Jackie was missing, and as data forensics tucked into the details of this case, they unearthed very concerning clues of the night before. On the evening of September 13th, Jackie tweeted to say, "I am glad I decided to get off Tinder and walk to a bar," which we already know was just before she had left Shots and Crafts. The surveillance footage found at the bar was enough to confirm that it was highly likely the two had met. But to add to this was a Facebook status Charles had left on his own social media. At 11:56 PM, a couple of hours after leaving Shots and Crafts with Jackie, he posted to say, "Teach you tricks that'll blow your mind." Investigating Jackie's cell phone data confirmed that she was in the Fry Street area of Denton until 9:41 PM, but by 11:57 PM, her cell phone pinged a cell tower near 377 south of I-35E. The last time her mobile phone pinged was at 1:32 AM at a tower located near 2084 Blue Mound Road in Hazlet, Texas. And, unsurprisingly, Charles's residence on Sand Hills Drive was located nearby. It's not clear what happened between the hours of 1 and 6 AM, but as we know, a fire was reported later that morning, revealing a body afterwards. And unfortunately, an autopsy the very next day would confirm everyone's most significant fears. The body was identified to be that of Jackie Vandergriff.
And more breaking news here at home. Out of Grapevine, the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's Office has identified the body found burned and dismembered in a park near Grapevine Lake last week. The victim is 24-year-old Jacqueline Vandergriff. According to her Facebook page, Vandegrift lived in Denton and studied nutrition at Texas Women's University. Grapevine police have arrested a suspect as of Sunday afternoon, but they've yet to release any information about that person. Police and FBI agents were investigating a Fort Worth home into the early morning hours this morning. Of course, as we get more on this story, we will bring it to you right here on air and online.
The local communities of Grapevine and Denton were both devastated by the news. In addition to this, it shocked the community of Texas Women's University, and the details of the crime left both anger and resentment. Now, perhaps you'd expect Charles to be on the run or hiding away from police, but as it turns out, he was actually very easy to find. And that would be because after violating his restraining order with Caitlin for a third time, he'd been arrested yet again. Apart from denying he ever knew Jackie or left the bar with her, he also showed no remorse throughout his entire interrogation. And these interviews were particularly fruitless for investigators, but one thing stood out to both of them. Charles portrayed the characteristics of a budding serial killer and narcissist. Now, Charles did eventually confess to the murder, and this eventual confession, along with all the upfront information and evidence, was enough to formally arrest him on suspicion of murder. Moving into the legal proceedings of this case, Charles Bryant's trial began in April of 2018, which was 19 months after Jackie's death. And boy, did it yield very interesting discussion points. Let's start from the outside and work our way inwards. Now, of course, to begin with was the surveillance footage taken at the Shots and Crafts bar, which linked Charles to Jackie on the night of her death. But there was a mountain of other evidence at the prosecution's disposal too. Although it's not an absolute confirmation of the crime, but authorities were intrigued to realise that satellite images of his home before Jackie's death had a swimming pool. However, moving forward, it appeared to be missing, and a flattened patch of grass remained. In addition to this, neighbours and his housemates also confirmed he had a pool there in the weeks prior. After obtaining a search warrant and searching his home, investigators found a receipt from a hardware store dated at 4:43 AM on the morning of her death. While here, he had purchased a shovel and some flu medicine, and after checking the surveillance footage from the store, it was confirmed that he had made the purchase himself. Located outside of his garage, investigators also found a large blue trash bin, and inside was a black cloth satchel with Texas Women's University printed on it. The bag matched the one Jackie was seen wearing on the night she was killed. In addition to the black satchel, investigators also found a large white plastic zip tie with blonde hair in the clasp, and DNA tests would later confirm that the hair belonged to Jackie. A military-style knife and a hacksaw were also discovered, which later tested positive for blood, and her mobile phone was also found a short distance away from her home. And to add to the already damning pile of evidence, but while searching his home, police allegedly found indecent images and videos of children on Charles's phone and computer. Charles had also been active on social media following the murder, with one Facebook post reading, "Full moon, let's see what trouble I can get into." And of course, we already know of "Teach you tricks that'll blow your mind." When they searched his vehicle, authorities discovered a battery which belonged to Jackie's cell phone. They also found a stun gun, which, sadly, after testing, was confirmed to have Jackie's DNA on the electrodes. The last recorded sighting of Jackie was confirmed to be in the late hours of September the 13th, when Charles stopped at a convenience store. It is debatable, but in this surveillance image, Jackie appears to look terrified. Moving back to the interrogation room, Charles eventually gave a detailed account of how he disposed of Jackie's body, which included details that only her killer would have known. But strangely enough, as his trial began, Charles pleaded not guilty to her murder, and instead claimed that she had accidentally died while the two had kinky sex in the back of his car. On the opening day of his trial, defense lawyer Glynis McGinty claimed that he had freaked out after her death, and travelled to Walmart at around 4 AM to buy a shovel and bury her body. And under this notation, she told the jurors that he was simply guilty of tampering with evidence instead. Speaking of evidence tampering, Charles also used her mobile phone one day after her death to tweet, "Never knew I could feel like this," in an effort to throw investigators off his trail. Of course, due to her former experience with him, one of the most significant parts of this story was Charles Bryant's connection with Caitlin Mathis. And despite the judge not allowing her to testify her whole story in court, she had already recently expressed that Charles was extremely intense as a partner. According to Caitlin, he always gave her flowers, and especially if he had something to be sorry for. Despite only being 18 years old at the time, she saw the early warning signs in his behaviour when he started to become controlling and manipulative. But after breaking up with him, he became obsessed with her, and this revealed the concerning actions and behaviour of a ticking time bomb. It appears Charles selected Fry Street on the night he found Jackie because Caitlin had talked about going there in the months prior, back when they were dating. So it seems that, even when meeting Jackie, his intentions were at least partially related to catching Caitlin by surprise. Detectives and many out there believe that Charles had intentionally killed Jackie out of his obsessive and relentless emotions for Caitlin. And if that wasn't enough for you, but right after her murder, Charles hacked into Jackie's phone and sent Caitlin a friend request on her own Facebook. And even after Jackie's death, Charles illegally contacted Caitlin, sending her many emails and love letters. Now, the evidence placed upon Charles was almost as relentless as his own obsessive mind, and the jury would spend only 2 hours to come to a verdict. On Monday 16th of April 2018, they found Charles Dean Bryant guilty of murder in the death of Jacqueline Vandergriff, with a minimum of 30 years before he is eligible for parole. Charles was also found guilty of tampering with evidence. It was concluded that Jackie had accepted a ride home from Charles, as it was heavily raining on the night they had met. But instead of taking her home, he forced himself on her, murdered her, and then tried to dispose of her body. They rejected his claims that her death was accidental, as one of the most brutal details of this case did not line up with that theory. If her death was just an accident, then why did he cut out her heart? It is very clear that Charles is a narcissist, a creep, and very troubled in the months leading up to Jackie's death. He sometimes treated women like objects, and I'm not going to judge anyone who likes it a little rough in the bedroom, but this Instagram post 1 year before her death leaves a very nasty foreshadowing. Charles is now incarcerated at the William P. Bill Clements unit in Potter County, Texas. He will be eligible for parole from September 2046, though hopefully his release will never come. And sadly, no matter what the rest of his life may entail, nothing can bring Jacqueline back. She was a brilliant and thoughtful young woman who had everything to live for. It's a tragedy that her life was taken away so soon, and for it to be so senseless makes it even more difficult for her loved ones to bear. Friends and family remember Jackie as a caring, loving, compassionate person who always strove to help others. Her main passion was to help everyone to see their own beauty and talents, and she encouraged all of her friends to pursue their dreams. Jackie will be desperately missed by her parents, sister, family, and friends. May memories of her warm, vibrant, enthusiastic personality and her constant words of love and encouragement continue to inspire and comfort those touched by her life. In Jackie's memory, TWU set up an endowment fund to help support an internship in the area of health and well-being. Her family and friends, and the communities of Denton and TWU will forever remember her face and her name. On numerous occasions, Caitlin has admitted that she struggles with the fact that she survived and Jackie did not, and claims she would have easily taken her place if she had the chance. It's an awful position to be in, but I hope that one day she recognises that the guilt she feels is not fair or warranted, and that she too was a victim. People often forget how messy life can be, and in a world of chaos and order, there is no way to predict the future. Just like there was no way Caitlin could have predicted such an outcome from a situation that first began with love. And at the end of the day, the only man or monster we can hold accountable is Charles. Anyway folks, I think that pretty much wraps up today's case here. Thank you so much for being here with me for another video of Coffee House Crime. So what do you think about this case? Please leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. Now I think I have one more video before the very end of this year, so I'll see you again very soon for another one. But until that moment arrives, please remember to look after each other, and of course, stay safe. Thank you, and goodbye.